If you want to know how I create custom logo designs completely from scratch, just like this one, I'm going to show you guys in this video. Hey everyone, my name is Megan. I have been a brand and web designer for the last 8, almost 9 years, and I've been running my full-time business for a little over 3 years now, and I love sharing with you guys my process, what it's like working with clients, what it's like running a business on your own. And in this video, I'm super excited to show you guys my logo design process and how I created a custom logo, not only using Procreate, but mostly using Adobe Illustrator. So the first thing I'm going to go over is how I actually start and strategize and what I do before I even begin on the logo design. The second thing we're going to go over is how I sketch out any sort of icons or elements that I'm going to be using in the logo. I'm going to show you guys how I do that using my Procreate app. And then the third thing I'm going to show you guys is the typography search. So how do we pick the right font for the brand? And then we are going to finish off with how I put it all together in Illustrator and the things I'm thinking about to make the logo feel balanced and how I create it in each of its variations. Now, before I dive too far in, I want to mention that if you guys are interested in videos like this, or you like seeing a little behind the scenes of my process, I share a weekly tutorial inside of my Patreon, sharing with you guys real client projects, how I design on Figma, how I develop websites. Not only that, but business tips, marketing tips, and all the things that you can think of in the business are all inside of my Patreon. And I also have an amazing community in there, and we're always chatting in the Discord, and I would love to get to know you, and I'd love to hear more about your business. But I always have a coupon code right down below in the description for my YouTube subscribers, so be sure to check that out down below. But without further ado, let's jump right into the video. Now, before I even design the logo, the most important part is to strategize and create the overall direction of the brand. So this video isn't going to dive too deep into that because I have a lot other videos that show the brand direction process, and I also have more on my Patreon. I'll link a few up here for you guys, but I like to create the mood board. I like to create the overall brand mission, the values. I like to dive into how are we going to make this brand look different from its competitors, and I just want to make sure that we are starting the entire logo design and branding process on the same page. So I want to make sure the client and I agree not only with the direction I'm going to go down, but also they agree with the imagery, the colors, the typography options. So I pretty much do all of that before I even start the logos. And this saves me so many revisions down the line because I'm able to understand that the client art and I are already on the same wavelength. So this is an example of my mood boarding process. I typically use FigJam to basically brain dump everything. Like I brain dump imagery, I brain dump all of the pins that I've been saving, even some of the pins that the client sends me. And a lot of the things that I'm asking my client are like, what is their style they're drawn to? What colors do they really want to see, or what colors do they not want to see? I also like to either get the photos that they're going to be using on the website from them at this point, or I'll go and find some imagery and photos that I think will look great with the color palette that we create. So I'm really just brain dumping everything and anything at this phase. And I always tell my clients it's better for us to go through a few rounds of this if we need to before we go too far. And that's exactly why I break it up into phases. So I'm going to go over here to my Procreate. You'll see I have a ton of work going on in here, but I want to show you guys what my first step is. And that is typically to open up a blank screen size canvas, just like this. I usually go to the little wrench up here and go to Canvas Drawing Guide, and I have my ink in black, which is perfect. And then I do love the rusty nib brushes, but I'm gonna actually just use the Studio Pen under inking, and I have all of my settings set up for my brush as well. And then I also have my size of brushing saved in here. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of like sketch out my initial ideas. I like to do this before I get started because then I can kind of brainstorm the elements and the icons. So let's first just write out the brand name. And actually I'm going to thicken up the size of this brush. So we have the Haven, and my streamline is super high right now. So you can tell the letters aren't exactly just writing from the hand. So I'm gonna actually bring down my streamline, and that should help me make it a little more custom. So we have the Haven here, and I also on my iPad will sometimes go open up my Pinterest and go to my folder here saved. I'm gonna go to the Haven branding. And in here, I can kind of get an overall vibe of like what I want the branding to look like. So I also want to create some like patterns and textures and things like that. But this just will help me out when it comes to, bringing this to life. So stuff like this is helpful to see. Like we can have Haven really big and maybe some text below it, even like mixing script with some regular text. So let's actually start with that. And that's why I like to go to Pinterest to kind of get the ball rolling. So we have, I'm going to make a new layer here. I'm just going to do it as if I were to mix script and just regular words like that, or regular lettering, and maybe even putting the up here, or we could even make the in script. Let me write that again. And none of this needs to be perfect. This is just for us to reference as we design. Okay, and I know that she talked a lot about like lace and loving the way like lace has some like really cool textures and stuff. So I think it would be really cool if we have some sort of submark that's in like almost like looks like an emblem, and I could picture just an H in here, and then like maybe making the outside lace. Like I said, this doesn't have to be perfect. I think the outside could be lace here, and then like maybe even some like lace around the H. That would be really cool. And then maybe doing that same thing but a script H. And yeah, I know this is not perfect, but I could picture something like this. Okay, and then another thing that I would love to see for her is a little bit more typography manipulation. So I'm gonna write out Haven here, and I could almost picture like the being written like this. Once I have the brain dumping kind of out of my head onto this, I then put it into a presentation, and I typically like to get approval on that before I move on to the logos. But the reason that I mention that in this video, which is all about how I create logos, is because I need that phase done for me to also do some inspiration searching for the actual logo design. So typically the color palette and the overall like elements, textures, all of that is decided on in phase 1. So that makes it super easy for me to then transition into phase 2, which is logos. So the very first thing I do with the logo design is I like to sketch out all of my ideas. So typically I'm using just a blank notebook, and I am just going nuts with like really bad sketches or some really good sketches, and I'm just putting all of my ideas out there. That way I can reference that when it comes to actually putting it into my Procreate or Adobe Illustrator. Thankfully, in phase 1, I've already been saving a ton of fonts that I like the look of that I can potentially use in the logos, but usually start with sketching out my ideas. So it'll look something similar to this, and then have some ideas and general like layout options that I like. That is when I typically will either go straight into Procreate to create the elements that will go around the logo, or I'll go straight into Illustrator. It really depends on the client on if they're going to have a lot of elements or if the logo is going to be typography based. Okay, so I just actually Googled lace so that we can pull in some images of it and actually create our lace sort of like texture for the logo. So I think this is kind of a cool example. Just want it to be a little bit easier to see and kind of recreate. So this is almost what I was picturing going around the emblems. I'm going to save that to photos. And let's see what else is in here. So there's some vector options of lace too. Just trying to get a photo that has a good amount of detailing. That is really cool. I'm going to save that, and maybe like one other option. So I'm going to go back to Procreate here, and I'm actually going to go create a new screen. And I always like to add my canvas drawing guide. Just helps a lot for me to see. Let's go to add, and I'm going to insert this photo here. And I'm just going to lower the opacity of it, make a new layer, and I'm actually going to go find a rusty nib, like pencil-y looking one. Something like that would be kind of cool. And make sure we're in a new layer. I'm just gonna sort of like recreate this, and we'll just kind of like duplicate it. And we're gonna have to vectorize this inside of Illustrator, so it probably won't look exactly the same once we image trace it, but I almost kind of like that imperfect texturing effect that image trace creates. I'm gonna like actually create the circle. Cool. Let me just do this again. And so now I actually don't really need this image. I can kind of just recreate from here. And then what we can do is duplicate this and flip it. I'm just gonna see if this would work. It might not though. Okay, so we'll just have to recreate these. But I think you can kind of start to see the vision a little bit of like creating an emblem that has like a lacy effect to it and detailing to it. And let's just add to this. Let's start from here. Okay, like I said, I kind of almost like the imperfectness of it. This is a little tricky because that one looked too wide. There we go. And this is why duplicating it's nice, because then you can kind of mirror it. And actually you can do mirroring by going to Canvas and edit drawing guide, symmetry, but we didn't start it that way. But if I were to recreate, this is how I would do it, because then you can do this. It's definitely not a big enough circle. So it makes it a little easier to create some symmetrical circles and logos in here. I don't know why I can't do this today, but I just wanted to show you that example. Let me just finish this one here. Okay, and I think it'd actually be kind of cool to do like little dots below it. Add a little more detailing. All right, it's cool. So that's our first option. It's definitely a little imperfect, but this is how I was creating the lacy effect. And then you can also add in some other ideas too. I added in stuff like this originally, which really helped me grab at least some of those like tiny little elements, kind of get some ideas for it. So you can do things like this. And actually this is when we could use the symmetry. So it kind of helps you create perfect little icons like this. So yeah, things like these I could use really awesomely through like logos and elements and stuff. So I'm gonna minimize this. Let's go grab another one with detailing. Like this also has a ton of detail. So I noticed a lot of lace has like flowers in it. Oops. Sometimes the Apple Pencil or like the touch of my screen will like delete things. There we go. Cool. So I'm gonna bring these over to Illustrator and show you guys how I turn this into an actual logo. But for this specific logo that I'm sharing with you guys in this video, we knew that we wanted it to be pretty intricate. We wanted it to have details and we wanted it to almost look like lace. So I knew that Procreate was going to be where I needed to start. So when I'm on Procreate, I usually just open up the screen size because we're going to end up vectorizing whatever we're creating anyway. I don't really need it to be in a specific sizing for me, but I will just go in there and I will either pull images of inspiration for me to reference as I'm designing, or I will just have my computer open and kind of reference that as I'm creating. So for this client, it was really clear to me that she wanted those like intricate details, and she shared with me any like interior design stuff that she was using in her therapy practice and studio. Like she had lace pillows and she had different things that had really beautiful trim around it, and I just could not get the idea of like lace out of my head. So I kind of knew going into this logo that that was something I wanted to see come to life. So I created a few different options. Some of them were more detailed than others. Some just had little pieces of the lace, but I feel that when I initially send my logos over, I like to get an idea of which direction they like the most and which direction we're going to go down. So I usually send my clients 3 initial logo concepts, and I also provide 3 rounds of revisions on the concept they choose. So typically I'm using Procreate. I do have a iPad and Apple Pencil, and it is my favorite. Like I love how the Apple Pencil will be able to feel the pressure you're putting down on the page, so it almost feels like you're doing pen to paper. But for some reason it's easier for me to draw on my iPad than it is on paper, and I think part of that is because of the settings I have set up in my iPad to make it smoother and to make it a little bit more foolproof. So I usually go into Procreate and I create all of those elements, and then when I have some elements that I'm really loving, that is when I airdrop it over to my computer, and that is when I go and vectorize those elements. So I use Adobe Illustrator to bring my entire brand to life, and I will just drag in those elements just like this into Adobe Illustrator. And I typically will image trace it as a black and white logo, or I'll image trace it as line art. It really depends on the detail in the specific drawings. Okay, the first thing that I want to do inside of my Adobe Illustrator artboard here is go and pull in the drawings I created on my iPad. So let me just go and airdrop these over. So I'm going to my Procreate, share, PNG, airdrop it to the computer. Okay. Cool, so I'm just gonna drag this in here, and looks like it pulled in one of those images too, but that's fine. So I'm gonna embed this, and I'm actually going to go to my quick actions here, and I'm gonna image trace. Okay, and then let's open up our tracing result, and then we can go to advanced here, and I can even play around with the type of image trace. If I wanted it to be more sketched art, we could do that. So let me zoom in so we can see more of the detailing, especially on these. So sketched art is going to bring in a little more of the texture, which I kind of do want for this brand. So let's bring down the noise a little and bring up the threshold slightly. So I actually really like this. So I'm gonna go to, we already ignored the color, so all we need to do is expand right here. Perfect. And then I'm gonna ungroup it all. Let's just delete this here. Don't even think I'm going to use this, but we'll group this together and drag it to the side. But this is where we really can play around with it. Cool. So we have that. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I opened up my Pinterest board. So let me just show you guys real quick. So I'm going to go to saved, and then I have a whole board here for the client of things that we were drawn to. So this is a logo that we both really liked, so I'm going to bring it over here as inspiration. I just want to set up my board for success so that we don't have to keep opening up all these different tabs. Also really like this to help me find some fonts that are similar, and this as well. It's going to open a new tab, but we can still bring in the image. And let's just find a few more. I think this is a good one too. Okay, cool. So we have some good typography images. So I'm actually gonna go over here to retype and match font. And this will help me find some fonts that look similar to this. And then what I can do is I can star these, any of the ones that stand out to me. And then I can also download any that I don't already have. This is pulling a lot of Adobe fonts as well. And then I'm gonna just grab some text here and type in the brand name. Let's increase the size of this. And then what I can do is I can just click on these fonts here. That way we can see the difference between each of them. And I don't know why I envision this brand having all caps. So I actually really like this font already. Let's just bring in the others. So these look very similar. Yeah, those are the same, just one's thin, one's the other option. So, okay, cool. I'm actually already really loving those fonts. So let me just try this one as well, find matching fonts. This will give us a lot of options to play with. So it's gonna be red like that until it finishes downloading. And the biggest thing I'm thinking about is fonts that are gonna look good from far away too, since she will have some fonts or a sign outside of her building that people will drive by and see. So we wanna make sure that we're considering that. I'm also gonna bring this over because I could see us using a script at some part of the font. Or some part of the logo. Image trace that and save a few. Okay. The script font are a little bit trickier, so I'm just going to use the H actually. And script is also trickier because, as you can see, every single script is going to look slightly different. So I know I don't like this one already, so I'm gonna delete that. Really like this one. So I'm gonna actually pull this one down here, and I'm just gonna start creating. Get my initial thoughts out there, and I'm gonna create an outline out of this, and I'm gonna group this together and bring this down. And I actually could picture this being closed, like filled in. So to do that, I'm gonna grab this little pencil icon because we're gonna need to close this together manually. Okay, it doesn't need to be perfect, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to Object and Compound Path Release. And it looks like it's not doing it for this one. So let me just go to Pathfinder. There we go. Okay, so now I'm gonna go back here, do that for all of them. Cool, so then from here we can actually kind of perfect it a little bit by grabbing this pencil and just kind of like reshaping those areas that we needed reshaped. Okay, awesome, so we have this. I'm gonna just duplicate it on each side. So let's go to transform here, and same for this. So something like this, it's still not feeling like perfect. There's still some like tweaking I need to do, but I do think we're on the right path for like what I'm envisioning. So let me just remove this over here. And I want to like make this a perfect little emblem first, and then we can add the lettering in. And I could even picture a like rectangle. This might even help me create the shape around it. And then let's add a stroke. The reason I was thinking this is that I can even like recreate these, but like in a rectangle. I don't know, I think a shape could be really cool for her. But for now, I'm just gonna remove this and let's bring over this H here. So I'm not loving that, but I do think maybe we could even use, and actually before I outline it, I'm gonna make a copy. Could see us using an H like this. Cool. And I'm gonna outline this. Yeah, see, that's already looking so much better. I'm gonna play around with this for a bit and show you guys what I come up with for the first concepts I'm gonna show my client. I'll do either of those to see which one came out with the best results. I'll ignore the background color and I typically expand it. And from here, we can kind of go crazy with the placement. And that's the nice thing about Procreate is I don't usually have to have it perfectly aligned or things like that. I can bring it into Illustrator and this is where I perfect everything. So now that we have the elements inside of Adobe Illustrator, this is when I'm gonna go grab all of the typography options. So we've already done some inspiration searching in phase 1. So this is when I'm gonna go pull all those fonts inside of Adobe Illustrator. Also, the nice thing about Adobe Illustrator is that they have the retype tool, which I can pull in any image of typography I like, and it'll find similar fonts that I either already have downloaded or Adobe fonts that I can easily just download straight to my Adobe Illustrator. I don't even have to leave the application, which is so helpful. So I typically will bring that all into Adobe Illustrator, and I like to just make an entire document page of all of my font options just stacked on top of each other. That way I can see clearly which ones are catching my eye, which ones maybe aren't the best, and I do lowercase, uppercase, all the options. And this is just super helpful for you to kind of eliminate and kind of like narrow it down to the fonts that you really want to go forward with. Okay guys, I know it's been a little bit of time since I showed you that first kind of like brainstorming session of her logo, but I wanted to show you guys what I came up with for her. I have quite a few different concepts to show her, and what I did was I actually went back to my iPad and created some illustrations and stuff that are a lot more detailed, because I really think that intricate detailing is gonna like make it look more obvious that it's lace. So I have some intricate ones all from my iPad, kind of showing you that same exact method I did, but what I did was I only created one little section like this and I just like duplicated it across all the sides. And these are all the concepts that I'm going to show her. And I really like how the fonts came together. So I showed you guys how I found all of these fonts. So I pulled those in as well as some script below it and really just showing her comparisons of each one. And I know I showed you guys on my iPad like doing maybe like a vertical text there, but I just think for a wide range of her audience, like we need to make sure it's legible for everybody. I also thought this was kind of fun too, because it almost feels like cottagey. I think that's the vibe she's going for her branding and interior design. So I thought this would be a fun option to play around with. Yeah, we have a ton of options. I also, let me just open up my other document to show you the other options I created. Yeah, so that was one of the inspiration ones, and I think we're really matching that vibe. But I also created these. I thought I would give her an idea of like maybe a drawing of like a cute little cottage like this as well, which I also think is really fun. And this too has some more of that lace detailing, which I also really love that. And then this is similar to what I was showing you guys originally, having it in some sort of like almost like rectangle with like a simple H in the middle. So once again for this though, I only created like the leaves, these leaves, and then I just duplicated it on top and bottom and added some circles to just like fill in the empty space. Yeah, I think this came out so cool. I am like super excited for her and her branding. It's just like way different than anything I've done. It has so much more detailing, super fun. And I also am loving these fonts. I love the little character of the S tilted. So these are 3 different fonts right here, but they work well together. So this is proof that you can have multiple fonts, and same with this, and just have them like pair well together. But yeah, I wanted to show you guys how I put this all together, how I think through concepts, and I hope this helps to see. These are also some other options I was playing around with, like a little light, a little bird in a nest, and I actually image traced an image of like a real tree here. didn't really love that. I was playing around with like a key, but that felt too hotel-ish to me. So we played around with lots of concepts, but I am super excited with how we kind of like work towards the final. And yeah, let me know if you guys also like how this all came together. A really important question to ask your clients in the beginning is, where are they going to be using the logo? Most of the time we want all of our logos to be scalable, meaning you can see it from far away and it's not gonna look like the thinnest font ever. So I usually will like to ask my clients like if this is going to be on signage or if it's going to be on stickers or t-shirts, or where is this going to be used, because that will help me determine which font will work best, and it'll also allow me to educate the clients on why a specific font works more than others. So really important question to ask, but I usually will pull the fonts I like the best from here, and this is when your creativity can really start to play. Creative juices will be flowing when you're on Procreate, but on Adobe Illustrator, this is when I am kind of having a lot of fun with like layouts and typography manipulation and how we're going to make this feel like it just belongs together. Like these things just felt like they were meant to be together. So I'm always thinking about that, and I usually will create a lot of different options and concepts. A lot of those don't even get shown to the client, but the ones that I really like the look of, I start to pull off to the sides so that I can narrow it down to showcasing those. So for this client, I knew that she'd be using it on signage. I knew that she wanted a simple submark or monogram that she could use on social media, even inside of her practice. And that is why I really focused in on those variations, like creating a primary logo that says exactly what this place is about, and then a submark logo that has all of those intricate details. So we ended up narrowing it down to this logo, and I am so happy with it. I think it's simple enough, yet it still required a lot of creativity and mixing of typographies and, you know, playing around with elements. And it's funny how the simplest ones, they look so simple, yet it did require a lot of detail and thinking and strategizing all behind it. So I wanted to show you guys this because this is typically how I design a logo from scratch. If you guys want to see it like live in action, I typically do show that in my Patreon, but this is kind of the details on what I'm thinking about when I'm creating logos and how I really like to bring that to life for my clients and the tools I'm using to make that happen. But if there's any part of my process that you guys want to see in more detail, or you want me to show a live view of that, let me know down below in the comments. I always want to hear what you guys would find the most helpful, and that helps me so much too. And if you guys enjoyed this video, you found it interesting, I would appreciate it so much if you subscribe to my channel. I would love that a ton, and I appreciate you guys so much for being here and always supporting my channel. I appreciate it so much. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you all in my next one.